Some stories, they just sound fake, right? Like something straight out of a Hollywood movie. Too wild, too impossible to actually be true. But the story of Staff Sergeant Eugene Moran, well, it's all true. And honestly, it's one of the most incredible things you'll ever hear.
To really get what happened here, we have to start with this number, 24,000 feet. Let that sink in for a second. That's over 4.5 miles straight up. And that's how high Eugene Moran was when his world didn't just fall apart, it literally fell out of the sky.
So that's the big question, isn't it? The one that seems to break all the rules of physics and logic. But the answer, you'll see, is this just unbelievable mix of luck, pure defiance, and a will to live that is just off the charts.
Okay, let's go back. It's November 29th, 1943. Eugene Moran, a 19-year-old farm kid from Wisconsin, is crammed into the tail of a B-17 bomber. And get this, it's his very first combat mission, a flight deep into Germany that the crews had a grim nickname for, a milk run to hell.
You know, a B-17 had a 10-man crew. They were a really tight-knit team. They had to be. But Moran's spot, the tail gunner, man, that was the loneliest seat on the entire plane. He was cut off from everybody else by 40 feet of fuselage. His only company? A couple of machine guns and a sky full of German fighters trying to kill him.
And can you even imagine the environment? I mean, at that altitude, the temperature just plummets. We're talking 43 degrees below zero. Frostbite was a constant threat, the air was thin and exhausting, and Moran's own breath would literally freeze into ice crystals on his oxygen mask. Brutal.
This mission over Bremen, Germany, was just unbelievably dangerous. Now, the theory was that flying in these tight formations gave them mutual protection, but the reality? It was a whole different story. As these black puffs of anti-aircraft fire, what they called flak, filled the sky, Moran watched a B-17 flying right near him take a direct hit, just fold in half, and disappear.
After they dropped their bombs, Moran's bomber, the Rikki-Tikki-Tavi, got hit by flak. An engine went out, and the plane started falling behind the formation, which was basically a death sentence. Suddenly, German fighters were all over them, and Moran, in the tail, was their first target.
Cannon rounds start tearing through the tail section. Moran gets hit in both arms. He glances down at his parachute, his one and only ticket out of this nightmare. And it's just riddled with holes, completely shredded by enemy fire. It was totally useless.
And then, the catastrophic moment. Another cannon round hits a weak point on the fuselage. Moran heard a sound he said he would never, ever forget. The shriek of tearing aluminum. The bomber just broke apart, right in front of him. The whole front of the plane just snapped off and tumbled away into the sky.
And just like that, he was totally alone. Trapped in this severed tail section, wounded, no parachute, falling 4.5 miles down into enemy territory. Statistically speaking, he had about 90 seconds left to live.
So was he just paralyzed with fear, waiting for the end? No way. In an act of just pure, unbelievable defiance, Eugene Moran grabbed his machine guns and kept on fighting. As German fighters circled the wreckage, plummeting towards the earth, he fired back. A man in a falling coffin, just refusing to die? So how on earth did he survive the impact? Well, the tail section's horizontal stabilizers, they acted like a crude wing, creating drag. So instead of a pure freefall, the wreckage went into this deadly, uncontrolled glide. It slowed him down just enough to make the impossible possible. He smashed through the tops of a forest, with the trees absorbing just enough of the impact before the final crash.
So, he survived the fall, yeah, but you gotta understand what survived even means here. His injuries were, well, they were catastrophic. The kinds of injuries nobody should be able to live through. The impact shattered both his arms, broke his ribs, and tore a piece of his skull away, leaving his brain partially exposed to the freezing air.
When German soldiers finally found him, they didn't exactly offer help. I mean, to them, he was the enemy who had just been bombing their country. They left him on a concrete floor in some military building for 2 days, just expecting him to die as infection and gangrene started to set in.
Eventually, they took him to a POW hospital. But in the brutal, cold logic of wartime triage, Moran's injuries put him squarely in the beyond saving category. Medical supplies were precious, and they weren't about to waste them on a guy who's almost certainly going to die anyway.
But then, another one of these little miracles happens. 2 Serbian doctors, also prisoners at the hospital, they saw him. Against orders, with almost no proper equipment, they decided they were going to operate. Their reason was as simple as it was profound. He was a wounded man, and they were physicians. They operated for 7 hours with crude tools and, somehow, they saved his life.
But Moran's ordeal, it was so far from over. He would have to endure another 17 months as a prisoner of war. That time included a horrific trip on what they called a hell ship, where he was packed into a dark cargo hold for 4 days as men died all around him in the filth and darkness.
And as the war was coming to an end, the Germans forced their prisoners on a brutal march west, trying to escape the advancing Allied armies. For 86 days, in the dead of winter, Moran and thousands of others walked 600 miles. The rule was brutally simple: you walk or you get shot.
The physical toll of his captivity was just devastating. When he was finally liberated by American forces, Moran, who had enlisted at a healthy 150 pounds, weighed just 93. He had lost nearly 40% of his body weight.
The scale of this tragedy was just immense. It's estimated that 1,500 Allied prisoners did not survive that march. They died from starvation, disease, frostbite, or were just executed by their guards. And yet, somehow, against all odds, Eugene Moran was not one of them.
After the war, Moran went home to Wisconsin. He got married, raised 9 kids, but he almost never spoke about what had happened to him. For more than 60 years, the man who survived the impossible just locked his story away. The memories were just too painful to bring back up.
But decades later, his silence finally broke. His story started to come out. His home state of Wisconsin honored him, his town named a street after him, and his full, unbelievable story was finally written down in a biography, making sure it would never be forgotten.
This became his personal philosophy, and it just perfectly captures the spirit of this man who endured the absolute worst that war and physics could throw at him, and chose not just to survive, but to truly live a long, full life.
In the end, Moran's story is so much more than just a wild tale of survival. It's really a testament to defiance in the face of certain death, to the flashes of humanity you can find in the most unexpected places, and to the quiet strength it takes to live with the ghosts of the past. It's a story that just pushes the absolute limits of what we think is humanly possible.